Yes, I give thanks. Talking about, the Caribbean Rastafari organization, its works, and also as we work within the realms of CARICOM, just to give a little insight as to who CARICOM is or what CARICOM is. CARICOM, which is the shortening for Caribbean Community. It is we all know the history of colonialism after slavery, and all the different islands, were on their own. First, there we heard about the West Indies Federation, where I think it was at the time it was 10 of them, 10 countries who came together with the intention of, uniting and working together. Then the federation failed, and then in 1973, the four of the so-called more developed countries, the MDCs as they were called, signed the Treaty of Chaguaramas in Trinidad and Tobago. That was on the 4th of July, 1973. And the gist of that treaty was to promote economic integration and cooperation among its members and to coordinate foreign policy. As I said, it started with the four most developed countries. Then currently, the CARICOM community comprises of 15 full-fledged members, meaning independent regions that are now full-fledged members of CARICOM, and there are 5 associated members. Those are countries which probably we would refer to as colonies. They are not yet independent. They are still controlled, whether it is by France or Britain. So they are not full-fledged members, but they are associated members of CARICOM. Well, the CARICOM is being administered by what we would refer to as the CARICOM Secretariat, which is the principal administrative organ of the community and has a mandate to provide a wide range of services to promote and deepen regional integration of the community, which is in essence meaning to provide unity. As His Majesty show I and I that unity is the accepted goal. So the leaders at the time set up the Caribbean community with the intention of bringing unity amongst its members. As to how far they've arrived or how much success they've had in terms of bringing that integrated, togetherness and oneness is a question which, the answer would vary based on different factors. Because presently it is stated CARICOM, but right now CARIGON. Because the integration is crumbling. So it's like it's gone. You see, so within the region, again, these are the legacies of slavery and colonialism, where every island still looking to stand on their own. That one believe is better than that one, and that one feel, well, if he have that one on his side, it will be a strain on his economy. So it's like it's a rat race going on. Every country for themselves. Every leader feel proud in saying that I am the prime minister of so-and-so country, and so on, but in terms of the integration, the unity, that has gone down the drain, Within CARICOM, as we see, there are a number of institutions which have been established. One of them is the Caribbean Policy Development Center, which is like the umbrella grouping for non-governmental organizations within the region, where they could meet and have a voice to air their concerns, their grievances, etc., to the CARICOM heads, CPDC. Also, of late in 2013, the CARICOM heads established what is known as the CARICOM Reparations Commission, meaning that they made up their mind that now, yes, we will engage the whole reparations campaign. So to facilitate that, they mandated all the leaders to establish CARICOM reparations committees in all the islands. And the chairpersons of those committees meet together within the ambit of the CARICOM Reparations Commission. At the onset of the CARICOM Reparations Commission, the Caribbean Rastafari organization wrote to the CARICOM heads, knowing the fact that Rastafari has always been at the forefront in terms of agitating for repatriation, for reparations. Rastafari has been at the forefront in promoting Afrocentric identity, identifying ourselves with our ancestral homeland, Africa, as against the colonial, whether it was Britain or France or Spain or wherever. You know, so these were Rastafari perspectives. So we approached them to become members. They wrote back to us and indicating that at the moment they could not entertain us as members of the CARICOM Reparations Commission. But they advised us in our different territories if we can become members of the national reparations committees, which would be established in the different islands. And we accepted that. Presently, I can say that Rastafari is well represented on all the various reparations committees throughout the CARICOM region. Then in 2018, there was a change of heart. And I guess the challenges, some of the challenges which they observed, they were going through as CARICOM heads, they needed to modify the structure of the CARICOM Reparations Commission. And so they made provisions to entertain civil society organizations. And from there, the Caribbean Rastafari organization was written to and we invited to become an associate member. We have other Pan-African institutions were also written to, and they are also become members of the CARICOM Reparations Commission. You know, so all of these things, I say that just to show, because a lot of people feel, well, boy, those people, the heads of government, although we realize that a lot of them, instead of them demoralizing or dismantling colonialism, what they've done, they've made themselves comfortable in what we call a neo-colonialist zone, you know, which is a compromise in line of one of the aims of the Organization of African Unity, which was to dismantle colonialism, racism, slavery in any form where they would tend to appear in this time. You know, so some of our leaders has, as I said, compromised, taken bribes with the colonialists, and they've found themselves into what is known now as a neo-colonialist situation. So the struggle for the fight against colonialism still continues. And Rastafari, we will never give up the fight. You know, and we know that there are other Pan-Africanists who are of that similar vision and willing to totally dismantle colonialism, because we all know what colonialism has done to us, both in the diaspora as well as on the mainland in Africa. And we're seeing it today, you know, but we give thanks for the youths who are now rising up in the Francophone region in Africa and saying enough is enough, you know. So that awakening, we within the Caribbean need to join hands in hands with our brothers on the mainland to really enhance what we would refer to as the black man redemption, you know, so Rastafari. So these are the mission and the vision in which the Rastafari nation is looking at what is happening within the realms of what would say the political realms in this time, you know? Yes. So talking about the Caribbean Rastafari organization, as we say, one of the aims was to provide the unification and sustainable trade and developmental program which would facilitate our reparations and repatriation. Since the CARICOM heads have entertained the reparations campaign, the Caribbean Rastafari organization has continued to be proactive. But the CARICOM heads came up with a 10-point plan, of which I think the first one was an apology, meaning where the colonialists, the perpetrators would come to that level where they would acknowledge that they've done something wrong and offer an apology, and what would say an official apology. The second one was repatriation, because again, because of the advocacy and the agitation of Rastafari and other Pan-Africanists, the whole repatriation thing becomes number two. Number three was Indigenous Peoples Development Program, because we know of the genocide which took place with the indigenous peoples, how when the Europeans came and they met the indigenous people and the amount of the genocide which was done. Very few of those people are still around, but they are still resilient and willing to uphold their culture. So in terms of the Indigenous Peoples Development Program, that is an area of helping them to get back to themselves. Cultural institutions, which is something which is very important. Again, you know, within our rehabilitating process, our healing process, cultural institutions. You find a lot of our cultural items and so on are found in museums all over Europe, whereas within the Caribbean islands, you hardly find any museum with these things. The children of the colonialists are able to learn more about our past than we ourselves. You know, so the introduction of cultural institutions so that the generation coming will be fully aware of our past, because the Right Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey told us, a people with no knowledge of their history and their past knowledge is like a tree without roots. And we don't want to be any tree without roots. Our roots have to be firmly grounded. Rastafari. Public health crisis. We know what our ancestors went through on the plantation, how they worked from sunrise to sunset, and the kind of food which they were fed, salt this, salt that, so you know, endless salt. So that has created a crisis within the Caribbean region today. Hypertension, diabetes, you know, these things are legacies of slavery. You know, so in the reparatory justice aspect, consideration must be given to the health situation of our people today. Because another thing which is happening is that most of the medication which are being prescribed to us African descendants in the West, these things do not work, because they were first, the research which was done to come up with those medication, white people that were used, or people who did not go through the trauma which our ancestors went through. So whereas it would work probably 80, 90% efficiency with those people, but with our people, African descendants, probably you barely get in a 50 or 60% effectiveness. So there's need for research to be done on our own people so that we could come up with the proper medications to treat their sicknesses. All of that is part of the healing process, the reparatory justice, which we need as a people. Psychological rehabilitation is another one. The way our mind, the way we were taught to hate ourselves. We were taught to feel that, you know, black is inferior and everything black is devilish and is white and everything white. That psychologically, this is still affecting us today. Some of us may try to deny it and say, well, but I never go to them things can have no effect on me. But we're making a big mistake, brothers and sisters. These things went through the DNA of our ancestors, and today it is affecting us. So we must address those issues, you know? The other aspect within the 10-point plan was technology transfer. We know that during slavery, during colonialism, the colonialists had no intention of using those Caribbean islands to do any technological development. All they needed us for was to get the raw material, send it up to Europe, process it, and then send back the process, the finished product, back to us at exorbitant prices. You know, they never spent any time of developing the technology to process all of these things within the region. So the transfer of the technology is very important. And the final one within was debt cancellation, you know, because all today, most of our Caribbean islands, when they claim they got independence, the rate of illiteracy was very high in most of them. The health situation was very critical, and they had to deal with those things on their own. Remember, during reparation, we never got a cent, you know. It was only the colonial, the massa people who got compensated. You know, so our leaders had to do all them things on their own. Hence the reason why all those Caribbean countries are linked with debt at this time. And it is debt from the very same colonial masters who pillaged the region, took all our raw materials and went up to Europe to process it and send it back to us in a refined manner at exorbitant prices. You know, so debt cancellation is very important in terms of reparatory justice. Now, as have been stated, repatriation. From the time of the Emancipation Act in 1834, 1835, 1838, all them times there, our ancestors been demanding repatriation. But at the time, they were not considered human beings, so their thoughts had no interest. They didn't take no heed to the call of our ancestors. You know, so today, hence the reason why we still have that mission to agitate for repatriation. We would be fulfilling the requirement, the heart's desire of our ancestors today. You know, so we cannot give up on repatriation. Yes, it's not everybody who want to repatriate to the ancestral homeland, but those who have that desire should never be denied. And that is why we have come up with what is known as the RSAP project, Reparations for Settlement in Africa. You know, so our repatriation program is one which is based upon establishing settlements. Yes, Reparations for Settlement in Africa project. In 2001, right, there was the World Conference Against Racism. which took place in South Africa, you know. And out of that conference, slavery, colonialism, the native genocide, all of these were considered crimes against humanity by the United Nations. And as a result of that, it was stated that there is need for redress, what we would refer to as reparations or reparatory justice. And within part of the reparatory justice, it was stated that there must be the facilitation of the welcome return for those who want to return, you know. It says that the descendants of those stolen people have a legal right to return to their homeland. A repatriation program must be established and all available channels of international law and diplomacy used to resettle those persons who wish to return. A resettlement program should address such matters as citizenship and deploy available best practices in respect of community reintegration. Very important, community reintegration, because we've seen there have been different repatriation programs that has taken place before, both on the African continent as well as outside of Africa, you know. Now, within our repatriation program, the way we vision it, it should not be we go in and establish separatist communities, because we were forcefully taken away, we were stolen away from Africa. We are Africans. So right now it's a restoration of that initial love and unity. You know, so we should not be looking to return and isolate ourselves from our African brothers and sisters. You know, so within the program, there must be integration programs. Right. Yes. Now, within the whole RSAP project, as we say, it is a project which it has not yet been finalized. We're still open for discussion. That's why we put it on the website so that the wider community can get an opportunity to go through it, see what it's all about, and see how they themselves could fit in whatever contributions one could make, you know. There is the website, well, the address is there, reparationforsettlement.net. When one have the time, one could go there, and there is a portal where it would require your name. You fill in your name, your date of birth, the name of the community from which you coming from, you know, the country where one would love to go, because some of us may want to go to South Africa, some may want to go to Ghana, some may want to go to Ethiopia, you know, whatever, you know. So all of these things, a database is being established so that we could gather all that kind of information. Because in discussion with whether it's the CARICOM heads or the African Union leaders, they would want information, data. How many of us come in? How many male, how many female, how many adults, how many young people, how many children? What skills, what resources are we coming with? How many builders, how many farmers, how many engineers, you know, things of that nature, you know. So the information is very important moving forward. Yes. Facilitation of welcome return. Yeah, the parties involved, because what we're saying with the proceeds from reparations, because it has already been accepted that there is need for reparations, you know, and as to what format it will take, that is where we now have to come. Just as His Majesty said that we must organize and centralize, so we must organize ourselves for repatriation. It's not just a matter of probably because I can buy a ticket, I just buy a ticket and run, go to Africa. No, it needs to be more structured, more organized, you know? The parties involved, the African Union, the African governments, United Nations, European Union, United Kingdom, the CARICOM, Caribbean heads, USC, financial institutions. All of these have a role to play because most of the financial institutions which exist today, Barclays Bank, the Bank of England, whatever banks, most of them benefited from slavery. And it's the proceeds of slavery which bring them to the position where they are today. So they definitely have a role in terms of the reparatory justice. They have a role to play. So we need to sit down with them in discussing the whole reparatory justice and the settlement of Africa initiative. They need their role to play because we as Africans, it don't make sense. Though some of us have been successful business people down in the West, it don't make sense for us now to take all our resources and go over to Africa, and we have to be financing all infrastructural development and all kind of roads and this and no. The facilitators of the transatlantic slave trade, who benefited, they have their role to play. So the proceeds of those things will be utilized to set up developmental programs, the infrastructure, roads, even airlines, boats to travel. You got to travel from the West to go to Africa. All of these things there is a cost to them. So the cost of these things have to come from the proceeds of reparations. So hence the reason why the need for negotiation, the need for dialogue between we, the African descendants, and the colonizers, the perpetrators of colonialism. Yes, the RSAP also proposes the creation of a financial institution specifically to provide access to capital for settlers to start, continue, or expand business projects that will aid in job creation, poverty reduction, and ultimate wealth creation. Yes, as I said, some of us are very successful business persons in the West. So now we want to transfer our business over to the mainland. So there's need for financial institutions to be established, which would facilitate us coming in with business plans to establish businesses in Africa. So presently there is the Africa Export-Import Bank. Although these banks are still attached to the colonial people, but at least Africa seems to have a greater say in the runnings of such institutions. So we come in with our resettlement program. Those banks need to sit down and with us and help us along the way as we come up with financial programs, to finance some of those settlements, because those settlements will become like investments in Africa, so they have their role to play. Institutions should have a developmental orientation and cater to the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprise sectors. Yes, there will be both the micro, small, medium-sized enterprise sectors, because some of us will be able to set up expansive business, probably like into agriculture, be able to invest in 1,000-acre farms. Some of us may be able to just in a 50-acre farm or a 20-acre farm, so there will be different rates, as they say, micro business. There are other businesses some of us would be getting involved in, as well, which would need that kind of a financial support. So we don't want people living in the West and coming in with the intention to establish business and then to get stranded along the way. You know, so the whole resettlement reparatory justice program need to take into account all of these factors, you know. Yes, you know, so as we see the project, it is wide open for comments, for suggestions. Once could go in and make their contribution in terms of, as we say, their interests, what area they are coming from, what area they would like to go to, etc., etc. You know, so all of these information is what the whole project entails. It is where we intend to utilize the proceeds from reparations added to our own personal investments in the West to help establish settlements in the African countries that are willing to receive us as returning citizens. Because we don't want, when we reach Africa, to be ending up with all kind of immigration problem and so on, because they consider you a foreigner, you only have 2 days left. No, that's not repatriation. The negotiation have to start even before we reach on the mainland. That as soon as we arrive, there is a certain office which has been established where these things are dealt with amicably. You know, we don't want no confusion and no conflict, because we've seen presently in areas where people migrate, or, well, some say migrate, some say they repatriated to the African continent, and when they reach is difficulties and where they have to run back to the West. You know, we don't want these things to be happening within our vision of repatriation. So hence the reason why we've come up with that initiative, and we're looking for the support of all of us within the diaspora. Currently, the diaspora is now considered the 6th region in Africa. You know, so as we're getting closer and closer, you know, so some of us may feel, well, boy, that repatriation thing, that is just a talk, it ain't gonna happen, and so on. No, we must never get weary. As we see, our ancestors started that cry, and it is our duty to complete the journey. And that is where we are today. So I give thanks for the opportunity to share with the IDEM some of the initiative that the Caribbean Rastafari organization is presently engaged with. This year is our Silver Jubilee. We're celebrating 25 years since the inception of the Caribbean Rastafari organization. And we're looking to go from strength to strength to eventually bringing the wider Caribbean community, because presently there are only 9 islands which comprise the CRO. And there are still others who we are waiting to come in to strengthen and make it a really strong Caribbean Rastafari organization. Give thanks, Rastafari. Blessed love.
With that, I'd like to ask, were there any questions for give thanks? Use the mic.
Greetings, Bongo Wisely. Can you hear I well?
Yes, I am. Yes, give
Yes,
thanks.
I'm wondering about governmental funding. Is there any funding or any kind of economics that's coming from a centralized place to strengthen this project? Or is it just I that are aligned with the project that will fund it? I'm just wondering if the eyes have spoken to any heads of state, you know, within St. Lucia or anything like, is, you know, reparations type vibration being funded by the government at all?
Yes, well, the CRO has presented that RSAP project to the CARICOM Reparations Commission.
Same.
We've discussed it with them. They have a copy of it. And well, currently they are looking to revise the 10-point plan, which they came up with. You know, so definitely as we say, we are hoping that the proceeds of reparations our investment, and definitely friendly governments. There are friendly governments who would definitely support those kind of a settlement programs, you know. So within the different islands, you may find like we have French, we have English, we have Spanish speaking, because we have Spanish speaking people within the CRO. Suriname, for example, is a member of the CRO. You know, so the Suriname government recently apologized and, you know, started working with the people towards reparatory justice, you know. So definitely the governments have a role to play, you know, and we will be collaborating with them in every way possible to facilitate those.
Yes, sir. Give thanks. Mighty work, Bongo Wisely.
Are there any other questions?
Greetings, Bongo Wisely Tafari.
Yes,
Greetings. My name is Genevieve Whitaker. Pleasant and good evening to everyone. I just want to first off just commend this effort, Dr. Jazeera, and everyone on meeting has come together, Rastafari. Bongo Wisely, I just wanted to put also that how impressed I am about this effort moving forward, and it's really great to hear of such work. One of the things, the two questions I have, one has to do with a lot of coalition building and also interfacing with the African Union, the United Nations, and how the group is coordinating also with presence in those bodies, as well as, for example, we now have the Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. Myself, a couple of years ago, I teamed up, which included Dr. Jazeera and others throughout the world. We pushed to have a permanent forum at the United Nations on a regular basis as a, the tool for advocacy. So if you can speak to that and how the organization would appear before these bodies, speak of the importance. And then the other part is about our youth. One of the things that I find that's most important is how we really influence the minds of our children for this continued work, because they're up against a lot of mixed messages, as well as even when we speak about the legacy of colonialism, we also speak of the current state of colonialism, as we brought out about neocolonialism. So how do we really work and interface with our children and the young people to get them to understand the importance of this work? And those are my two points and also questions.
Yes, I give thanks. Yeah, well, with the second question about the youths, it's very important, you know, because within the struggle, there must be continuity. You know, as we say, the campaign started with our ancestors from 1834, you know, and right now in 2023, and the victory is not yet total. So the coming generation, but even presently, we on the battlefield right now and agitating, chances are we may not be the ones to enjoy the full victory. It may be our coming generation. So we definitely have to see to it that there is continuity within the struggle. And to ensure that continuity, education is the key. Education of the mind is very important, you know, because with colonialism, you know, one of the things which, I mean, some of our ancestors kind of give up under colonialism, and well, you know, some of them were bribed, although they were brutalized, and some of them, their zeal, their morale was, you know, depleted, you know. So it was hard for them to really build up any resistance. But presently, I mean, we've come through it, we reach a stage now. Now, with the present generation, currently, even when we look at it, you know, in life itself, whether Rastafari, outside of Rastafari, you know, there seem to be a generation gap being created, you know, where there seem to be a distance between what would refer to the elders and the young generation. Now, we don't want that to happen. We don't want that to continue. So presently, we as the elders, it is our responsibility to see to it that the coming generation are properly educated. Now, within that education, it is what we would refer to as a decolonization of the mind. Because it's not just going to school and coming out with a degree or coming out with a master's and so on, you know. To be properly educated, our minds need to be decolonized. But as I said earlier, you know, a lot of our leaders, instead of they fighting against colonialism, they've created a comfort zone, which we refer to as neo-colonialism, you know, and making us feel, well, yeah, man, is we in charge of our things, we doing this, you know. Now that have the youths and them confused. Yeah, because the same brutality which when the youths and them learn about their history, they will realize, boy, it's the same brutality which their great-grandfather went through. So how come them people saying as these things are all right now? You know? So there's the break in education. We have to make sure that there is that continuity within the education. First the unlearning of the colonial thing, and then the relearning of our new culture, you know? So these are the areas to make sure that the coming generation will be fully interested and aware of the past so that they will be able to be the ones to really bring forward the victory. So it is not an easy road, but then we are aware of what is required. But then the forces are against us because colonialism, racism, these things are still rampant today. When we claim we are independent countries within the Caribbean, we still have a lot of racism going on, even within the Caribbean islands. A lot of discrimination, you know, employment and so on, you know. So there's a lot of work to be done still, you know, to really make sure that the coming generation are on board. Give thanks. And what was the first question? The first question was, again, I kind of miss out on it.
Blessings. For the part about being, making sure to coalesce with others and unite and make sure we're present within the spaces, United Nations, African Union, and all the spaces within the Caribbean as well, making sure that we're present at those forums and speaking volumes about the works.
True. Yes, that's very important. Collaboration, cooperation, you know. Now, that brings me to the words of His Majesty in addressing the League of Nations, or was it the United Nations, when he spoke about the speech war, which Bob Marley popularized in song. You know, until the color of a man's skin is of no more significance than the color of his eyes. You know, the whole racial discrimination thing, you know. Now, the United Nations, even from the start of the League of Nations, where His Majesty addressed them, and it was his address, you know, to the League of Nations, which caused the demise of the League of Nations and the rebirth of the United Nations. But up to today, we still see that the leaders of the United Nations, so-called Security Council members, you know, they violated the basic principles of the United Nations, where it's supposed to stand for the interests of small islands or the underdeveloped nations and so on. But right now we're seeing is the more developed nations just take advantage, you know, with the security thing where they have immunity, you know, and so on. So that in itself is an injustice, is an imbalance, you know. Hence the reason why we have wars and rumors of wars happening all over, you know. But His Majesty show I and I that unity is the accepted goal. So presently, as Rastafari, there are other Pan-Africanists who are of that same mindset, that unity is the way to go. And they are willing to work together, put aside our differences, You know, so that is where, so we as Rastafari, we are prepared to work with the Pan-African world to enhance that Black man redemption, African redemption. You know, so definitely we cannot do it all by ourselves. We need the support of all our African brothers and sisters. As His Majesty say, we must be able to put aside our differences, because he said there will be differences. We cannot run away from that. Some of us grow up in different environment, different backgrounds, so we have different cultural vibes. But we must be able to put aside those differences for the sake of the common good. And when we look at what is happening in the world today, you know, is white supremacists not giving up the fight, because the Lion of Judah did defeat them, you know. As it said, the Lion of Judah have prevailed in 1930, conquered the red, white, and blue, which is the symbol of colonialism, you know. But right now, Vatican and those so-called Zionist people now trying to enter Africa and claim as though the Holy Land, and they are the chosen people of the Almighty, you know. So it is the same apartheid system which was in South Africa is what we see happening in Palestine today, you know. So with the blessing of the Pope of Rome, just like during the time of Mussolini, Vatican blessed the arms and so on. Right now, Vatican and America endorsing Israel into what's happening there in Palestine. And that is making the Israelis feel as though they are invincible, you know? So African people, we really need to unite. The African Union, you know, is divided all now. You know, look at ECOWAS, was willing to side with France, you know, and attack the African people. You know, it shows that, you know, we've not really gotten rid of colonialism. So as His Majesty said, the victory is not yet total. So we have to persevere, but we must be united as African people to bring that victory, you know?